Last one in is a rotten carny. That's probably what we're. Did you like that? That was a terrible Trump impression. I'm sorry. But the reality is, here we are. We've got just days till the August 1st deadline, and it seems like everybody's having a pool party at the White House, from the EU to Japan to even India, getting very close to being invited to that party. And here we are with Mark Carney kind of peeking over the fence like Wilson on Home Improvement. What is going on here? Yesterday, Donald Trump just signed yet another trade deal, this time with the European Union. The entire European Union. Yes, Donald Trump, the man the Canadian liberals love to mock, just secured yet another deal before the August 1st deadline, a sweeping agreement with Europe that includes 15% tariffs on almost every major trading good between them, with carve outs and buy sell provisions on key energy sectors and other strategic industries. And guess who's not on that list of successful international negotiations? That's right. It's Canada. And leading this parade of failure is none other than Mark Carney, the self declared master negotiator, former Bank of England boss, as Dougie Ford likes to call him, international finance whisperer, right, Doug? And now the Prime Minister of Canada, who can't close a deal to save his political life. Let's talk about why this is such a humiliation for our country. Let's compare what Trump got out of Europe, what Carney gave Europe, and what it means that Canada is consistently and conspicuously always last. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. So what did Donald Trump just pull off with the EU? Well, the deal is built around reciprocal 15% tariffs on the bulk of traded goods between the United States and the European Union. That might sound pretty steep, but here's what you need to fully understand about these deals. This isn't Trump punishing Europe. It's Trump drawing clear lines of engagement in a world that has shifted toward protectionism. It's a hard-nosed, unapologetically America First framework that makes it worthwhile for both sides to maintain trade anyway. Because the rules are now known, they're locked in, and they're enforceable. So no more gray area, no more gray zones, and no more litigation in foreign courts. But even with those 15% tariffs, the agreement includes energy cooperation, targeted exemptions, and supply chain resilience clauses to boost mutual investment in semiconductor production, rare earths, and energy security. Trump's message is this: if you want to trade with America, there will be a cost, but you will get predictability, and you'll get stability, and you'll get strength. It's not going to look like it did before, but it is still trade. He didn't give Europe free access to the American markets, but he didn't give anyone that. He made them earn it. And guess what? They all said yes, because the logic behind all of this is that we still need trade with the US, and we're going to have to start to realize that here in Canada, being their direct neighbors. So let's rewind for a moment to Mark Carney's big EU moment the Liberals were all celebrating a couple of months ago. Do we remember this? When Carney traveled to Brussels in May, making headlines for sipping wine with EU elites and lecturing about carbon neutrality. He didn't come back with a 15% tariff structure, however. He came back with a climate alignment pledge. That's right. While Donald Trump has been spending all of his time hammering out hard-earned trade terms, Carney signed a non-binding framework that commits Canada to increased climate cooperation with Europe. Now, here's what's interesting. It's aligning us with the EU's Fit for 55 agenda and carbon border adjustment mechanisms, the CBAM for short. If you don't know what that means, here's the translation for you folks. Canada agreed to let Europe tax our exports unless we match their carbon pricing. That's exactly what happened there. Let that sink in, because instead of negotiating access to European markets, Carney handed over control of our emissions policies to European bureaucrats in exchange for talks about talks, but nothing more. Where Donald Trump so far has demanded reciprocity, Carney gave away sovereignty. just to the EU instead of the US. Where Trump got exemptions for critical industries, Carney locked us into carbon penalties. Where Trump made a deal with many people around the world, Carney has made speeches. And that's the real problem here. One leader negotiates like a businessman, the other like a central banker turned activist who thinks he can save the world by hosting a symposium on climate finance. It just doesn't work that way, Mark. And now you're sitting in last place. And this is how teams get to last place. Because this brings us to the heart of today's topic, really. Why is Canada always finishing last lately? Well, if we do the math, the answer is loud and clear. Since May, the United States has finalized trade agreements with the following: the United Kingdom, Japan, now the European Union, and even India is said to be next. And then there's been a lot of smaller ones done as well. All of these deals came with tariff structures, enforcement mechanisms, and energy components. All of these deals excluded Europe's best friend, Canada, because only we think we're best friends with them. And yet, Mark Carney wants us to believe we are in the very intense phase of our negotiations with the US. I want you to think about this for a second. Let's be blunt. If it's so intense, why is everyone else already done? The truth is, intensity means nothing without actual results. If a football team, your favorite one, is working very intensely but loses every single game, do we applaud their effort or do we fire the coach? Canada is now visibly and undeniably being treated as an afterthought in the global trade order. Even our closest partner, our biggest trading ally, the country we share the longest undefended border in the world with, is now closing deals with everyone else but us. What does that say about Canada's negotiating credibility? And furthermore, what does that say about Mark Carney's leadership? It says this: the world doesn't take Canada seriously anymore. And under Mark Carney, they probably shouldn't anyway. So here's the thing: what can we expect if a deal does actually come by this Friday, August 1st? Well, let's say, for argument's sake, that we actually do get some kind of deal here, that Canada and the US do announce a trade deal before Friday, August 1st, or even on Friday, August 1st. What should you expect? Well, number one, here's the thing. You're going to have to expect tariffs because everyone got tariffs. And there are going to be more tariffs than anyone else, probably. Fewer exemptions, probably no special carve outs for energy, dairy, or technology, and likely a quiet clause about Canada permanently dropping the digital services tax and being barred from any future attempt to tax U.S. tech companies. In other words, we're going to see capitulation disguised as cooperation. And here's why that matters. Because if you are last to the table, you are at the mercy of the menu. The US has already structured its deals with the UK, EU, and Europe and Japan. If Canada wants in, we have to agree to terms already settled with others. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We no longer negotiate. We just beg for a seat at that table. And make no mistake, there will be spin by Canadian media. CTV will call it a breakthrough. Carney will say it's a balanced compromise between Canada and the US, but all it really is going to mean is that Donald Trump got what he wanted from Canada without having to prioritize us at all, because we came crawling last, back to the table, because everyone else got something. Please give me that too. So here's the thing. Mark Carney promised Canadians a world where we'd be leaders on the global stage, and yet nothing is getting done. No projects have been started, and we can't even finish a deal with the US. He said there would be voice in the room, the climate broker, the steady hand, but all we've gotten is delay and deference and dependence. Our prime minister spent months cozying up to Europe and preaching climate justice instead of delivering trade results. He sacrificed leverage for lectures. He prioritized photo ops over freight routes. And now we sit at the kids' table while all other countries negotiate with Donald Trump, begging for crumbs after the adults have already eaten. Here is the dire warning every Canadian needs to hear. If Mark Carney's trade deal with the US, should it actually come, if it comes, it will likely arrive in the final hours, and it will be stuffed with concessions, probably buried concessions too, dressed up in diplomatic language and celebrated by media outlets who won't read the actual print. But behind the curtain, Canada will have paid more, received less, and been played like a fiddle. This is not leadership. This is not sovereignty, and this is not how a G7 nation should be treated. And the longer we let this liberal government fumble our global relationships, the harder it's going to be to recover the trust, the respect, and the leverage we've already lost. So if you're watching this and wondering what you can do, don't be distracted by the press conference sound bites, the fist pumps for a reduced toll bridge on a bridge that 4% of the population uses. Remember, who was in charge when it all went wrong? That's what I want you to remember. Because if we're always last with Carney, eventually we're not going to be invited at all. We'll see you tomorrow.